And we're up and running. Welcome to episode 3 of the Super Geeks Make It So Picard Aftershow. Let me introduce our hosts and guests, and we'll jump right into discussing The End is the Beginning, the latest episode of Star Trek Picard. I'll start off with our guest this week, who is a longtime contributor to the Axamonitor Facebook group on Facebook. She's probably the best respected person on that group, I think. She possesses a keen critical mind, and we're glad to have her. I think this is only the second time I've heard her voice. Kate Stark, welcome to the Super Geeks.
Thanks for inviting me, Alice.
And also, the Eyebrows of Doom joined us again, and hopefully feeling better than last week. Ross, how are things this week?
I'm feeling significantly better. I can actually speak now. All these symptoms are essentially gone, so I'm back at 95% and good to go.
He's at game show host level. Yeah. Perfect.
And our producer, Justin Burton. How are you doing, Justin?
Hello. I'm doing quite well.
I see you've got a new microphone this week with your very own pop filter, so you're looking smooth, my friend.
Thank you.
And, of course, our resident contrarian, Index, aka Sunseal. How are you, Sun?
Hello. Yes, I'm here. I'm doing well. I'm Index. What can I say?
You're Index, truly.
I am archiving everything.
And last, and I was going to say also least, but since we've now caught up with what he knows about Star Trek Picard, Sean O'Halloran. We no longer hate you for seeing the premiere in Hollywood. How are you this fine week?
I am great. I would like to point out that, yes, I totally agree that Kate is probably the most well-respected member of the group, where I am on the other end of that scale completely.
Hey,
no
my
kidding.
disdain for you was purely about the climate you're currently living in.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on too. It's not hate for the me seeing the first 3 episodes for everyone else.
Yeah,
It's just beautiful weather we're having.
No, that was just envy.
Sean's just
Indeed.
a #1 shit poster. So.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was Joe.
True. That is true.
Joe's number
Joe
2
probably comes in second
Sean.
place.
Yeah. Sean
And,
wins.
Yeah,
And we
okay.
certainly miss Joe this week. Hopefully he'll be joining us again. In the meantime, let's get set to dive into our review of The End is the Beginning, the 3rd episode of Star Trek Picard, and really sort of rounding out what could be considered the opening chapter of the series. And we had a lot of questions answered, a lot more raised, and we'll be going through those. Some of the specific issues that we think are worth discussing in a little bit of depth. And although we will be talking about death, thanks to Sun. And finally, we'll wind up with this week's Picard prediction smackdown. We'll be taking a look at how we're doing on the predictions we made last week, and if we have any new predictions as of this week. So that's what our time together today looks like. We're going to start off by talking about the actual episode, The End is the Beginning. So in this episode, Picard finally puts together his ragtag motley crew of people who are going to help him find Bruce Maddox and try to find out the truth behind the twin android synthetic sisters. And we get a peek into even more of the backstory about what brought Picard to where he is today, starting off with a flashback 14 years before at Starfleet headquarters, in which we discover that, we meet Rafi Musiker, who is played by Michelle Hurd, brilliantly, I would say. And we find out, a little bit about their relationship. She was basically his right-hand person as he was preparing the fleet that was going to help evacuate the Romulans in the face of the coming supernova. And then, of course, that all went awry with the synth's attack on the Utopia Planitia yards in Mars. So we meet her and contrast that with her in present time. And we see that there was once a relationship of mutual respect. We see it a bit more negative in the present. Who wants to start off talking about what they think of Rafi past and present? Let's start with Sean, since I'm not mad at you anymore.
I love this character. It's very clear she's incredibly strong, and she was a perfect first officer for Picard at the time when she was his first officer. She's no bullshit. She's incredibly smart. It's very clear that she has a very intuitive mind. She's brilliant with research, much like our own Kate Stark here. And she is able to see connections that other people can't. And she's got a heart, man. She's got a heart, and I think this is why she not only worked so well with Picard as a first officer, but why she was so devastated when he left Starfleet, and she was left in the dust with him. She was part of the fallout from that.
And contrasted with what we see about her when Picard tries to convince her to help him find Maddox when in the desert, where she's been living the life of sort of a hermit, it looks like. What do we make of their relationship? She was devastated by what happened, clearly. But what do we see is left of that relationship, and what do we think is going in the future? Kate, why don't you start us off?
Well, I would say she probably still is devastated. I got a distinct impression that she lost a huge part of her identity when she was fired for essentially following Picard on the Romulan evacuation plan. And I don't think she has recovered from it by the time Picard asks her for research assistance in finding Maddox and finding a ship and things like that. But I think because of that kind of core element of she just can't let it go, she's got this undercurrent of just pure determination. She was not going to give up until there were no other options, and that still comes back and gives her this opportunity to assist Picard again, despite everything they've been through and how she still feels.
She really lets him have it 14 years later. She accuses him of a lot of really not great stuff. Not being a good friend was the top of the list I made about them. And I don't think she's wrong. Son, what do you think?
I think you're right, but I also think part of the fall of Rafi in this is that she had more faith that Picard would turn some miracle. Because Picard is Mr. Miracle Man, let's be honest. And when that was it, that was kind of it. So instead of, I think the hate that she has for Picard, like she says, has been built up. At the beginning, I could understand her having a hate for Starfleet more than anything, because let's be honest, she's being fired for following the command of another person. And I don't care who you are, that ain't cool. That ain't cool at all.
Mm-hmm.
That would definitely put some resentment into a person for that organization. Yet, over the course of this 14 years, that hate has compounded onto the, you never checked in on me, you never said hi, you never called just because it was Wednesday. Why are you here? You want something from me. And it's also built on this paranoia that she's had kind of all along, even before being fired. In the comic book, we see she has this, like, it's explained even in the comic book that she's always had this kind of paranoia about stuff. And because Picard even calls it out in the comic book. So he says, oh, you're just being paranoid again. And it's really just a compounding of all of these different issues on top of one of another. And it all just comes to a head when they meet again for the first time in 14 years. And she has strengths in her.
Ross, what do you make of the reunion of Rafi and Picard? Did it feel realistic to you? Do you think she was justified? Do you think he was justified? What was your impression?
I think she was certainly justified. Rafi is quite the parallel to Picard in this encounter, where when Picard left Starfleet, it was semi-voluntary, but when he left, he wasn't alone. He at least had the support of Laris and Javan and the Vineyard and at least some form of purpose to keep him going, as he said at the end of the first episode, waiting to die. Rafi, on the other hand, she was abandoned by Starfleet, abandoned by Picard, and by all accounts, she had no friends or support groups to hold on to, as she effectively lost everything. So no wonder she's bitter and angry and resentful and directing all of that on the man who caused it all, who just showed up out of the blue with a bottle of wine.
And yet she helps him.
Yeah.
What do we make of that? Justin, what do you think?
Well, one of the things I really kind of noticed is that they just kind of retconned the comics a little bit whenever Rafi's and Picard's conversation there at the beginning. Because remember, they mentioned, why would the Tal Shiar sabotage their own rescue? When in fact, they tried to sabotage Picard's rescue, thinking it was a Federation plot in the comics.
They sabotaged the mission to seize the Verity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a little different than blowing up an entire shipyard.
And remember also that that in the Countdown comic, that was the Tal Shiar. We're talking about the Zat Vaj in the now, of course, 14 years ago, Rafi didn't know the difference, and probably at this point she still doesn't know the difference, because I don't think she's got a mission briefing. But I think the distinction is important as we're in the present now, and their future. But and we discover that the Tal Shiar and the Zat Vaj have two very different agendas, and the Zat Vaj may have prioritized not allowing a large increase in synthetic life forms close to their border.
Oh.
Saving Romulus,
Yeah. There was something else that goes. We finally got to see the first actual new shuttlecraft prop. That didn't look like a Discovery era shuttle. This reconfigured.
Alex, I'll take things I don't care about for $500. Though.
Whoop-de-doo.
I wasn't actually impressed. I thought it looked like the Scooby-Doo gang's van.
It looked like somebody threw
The
something
mystery
together
machine.
at the last minute. I think that because too many people were complaining, to be honest. But
They changed it in a week? No.
I'll be honest. That's probably the one detail I have completely missed this episode. So there you go. I didn't even know there was
the ship
a new
design.
shuttle. I didn't even know there was a new shuttle. So
It's definitely the perspective of a certain kind of fan.
We
sure.
did finally get that Vasquez Rocks caption that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yes, and the drug use, which I think
Drug use.
because he pointed out last week, is like, it looks like they edited it out, but it actually was in the third part.
I'm really surprised that no one's complained about that, though.
What?
Don't worry, I will.
What? Are you kidding?
No,
Everyone's
drug use.
complaining about it.
They are?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I watched the Trek Yards one today, and jeez.
Oh,
Samuel,
God.
please calm. Samuel,
Stuart
if you're
Foley
watching,
needs
you're
to-
probably not. Calm down, please.
He needs to smoke some snake leaf. That's what Stuart needs.
Was his issue with her smoking?
No, he had. He's such a nitpicker. But no, Twitter. It was all over Twitter. It was mostly Twitter.
That's great. Oh, well, there you go.
Well,
I hate Twitter.
if they're, if
The
they're
idea,
talking,
apparently,
it was worth
I mean,
it.
yes, smoking has been in Star Trek before. Come
Sure
on,
has.
guys. The ambassador on Nimbus 3 was smoking when they showed up.
Yeah, but that
you've
was Star
had-
Trek 5, and it doesn't count. Just like
Cyborg
Cybok
the
doesn't
movie
count.
sucks, but it still counts.
Damn right.
They also had Uhura doing a feather dance, which I also take out of canon. So
Hey, don't
I'm
forget
just saying,
representation.
that was not a pleasant thing to look at.
Look,
I love Nichelle Nichols, but good Lord.
it's always been very funny to me that Star Trek has taken a definite stance on film against capitalism, but has never said a goddamn thing about smoking.
That's right.
It has been mentioned in certain episodes. I think Wesley said something in TNG. But the whole point of this is to show just how badly she
How far
took her
she's
break from
fallen.
Starfleet.
Yeah.
That she,
Yeah.
like I said, she's alone. She has no support, so she's falling into coping mechanisms. She's drinking, she's smoking, she's doing what she can to cope with a really shitty situation.
I'm
You know,
not
it-
entirely sure that the smoking was a coping mechanism after the fact.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, Index, because I don't know if you all have seen her interview in the Ready Room,
I have.
but Will Wheaton interviews her, and she talks at great length around her belief in, the backstory for Rafi is that she is an addict, and that her time on the Verity working with Picard was one of the few times in her life where she felt like she had purpose, and after that fell through, she fell back on some old ways, and ended up where she ended up. So,
Well, I mean, the conversation
says-
with Picard kind of led to this notion that she might have been using on the Verity.
I didn't get that sense. I got the sense that she used before she knew him. And again, Michelle Hurd says that explicitly in her interview.
And we all know Picard has this thing to rescue troubled cases. Rolaren and other. He could have came across her and recognized her talent. And
Well, I get the feeling, if anything, that when she's on her A game, that she is functional with her.
Well, we
addicts.
see, we see that later in the episode when she's doing some research, which Picard naturally assumes she is doing because he knows her.
Right, exactly.
so-
And the other side of that too, though, is also remember in the flashback, she was just going down the list of all this shit she had already organized for
Right.
him to present. So she's
Which had plenty of little
on her
Easter eggs in it, by the way.
game. Yes, it did.
A lot of
Yeah.
Easter eggs in this episode.
Yes, lots. We'll be talking about that a little bit later too. So she actually does end up helping him almost right away, if begrudgingly, and without actually saying it aloud, by giving him. She does say this part aloud, where she sends him to see Rios, an ex-Starfleet officer who has his own off the books starship, and Picard goes to visit him. I really like the little astrogator they had in the cockpit of the starship, which was very reminiscent of the old Enterprise astrogator, with the little compass thing that snapped between
Mhm.
Chekhov and Sulu.
Yep.
That was in the same place on this ship as well. But we meet Rios, who's an individual whom Picard.
Well, that's very descriptive.
Yeah, well, Picard
a
thinks
troll?
he's got his number right away, saying you are Starfleet, and of course indicating that he also fell out of favor with Starfleet or vice versa for some reason we don't know about yet. But we finally meet this guy. What do we think of Chris Rios? Sean?
We've got our own Han Solo, thank God. About time. That's all I can say about this. I think he's great. He's the swashbuckler we've needed in Star Trek. He is what happens when you write The Outrageous Okona, but it's not shit. That's who he is.
Are you sure he's Han Solo? Are you sure he's Han Solo?
I think he's-
Because he
Yeah.
seems
Yeah.
a whole hell of a lot more like a Hugh Jackman Wolverine than a Han Solo.
Yeah, I can
know
see
about
that
that.
too.
I like
can
that.
see that
Didn't
too.
they-
They're-
didn't
maybe a mix of both.
Didn't they imply that Han Solo had actually been enrolled in whatever the academy
Absolutely.
was?
No, it's
Yeah.
not just
Yeah, he
implied. It wasn't just implied. It's in Solo. He actually was in He joined the Empire to be a pilot because he was a pilot, and he actually wanted to be in a grunt instead. They put him out in the field as a soldier.
Well, he flunked out because he was insubordinate.
Right, because he was on soldier. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so I think we do
Surprise.
have a similar thing here. But who's the Wookiee, John?
Oh God.
I think Girardi's the Wookiee.
The holograms are the Wookiee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the
By the
holograms.
way,
I love those holograms.
Right.
My favorite one is the Irish one, the emergency engineering hologram.
Navigational.
Yeah, I love how each one has a different accent. That was awesome.
And they all look like him. So that's not an ego.
They all look like him. So yeah, indeed. I also want to give a shout out to the lateral vector transporters on this ship.
It's nice to see those again.
Shenzo, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I thought that was nice. You see them a lot in the publicity photos for this show, so they're getting their money's worth out of that set piece for sure. So how do we feel about this guy? I mean, do we think he's legit? Do we think he's in for the long haul?
I have an interesting
just for the money?
insight that I've been itching to talk about with this guy. So when Picard comes on board, he's greeted by the hologram. He finally meets the guy, and his first impression is a jagged piece of metal sticking out of his shoulder.
Yeah.
One of the first insights we have into the character when Picard sits down is a book that's sitting in that seat. Now,
The Tragedy of Life.
The Tragedy of Life, author Miguel de Cervantes.
Oh,
Now here,
I
now
didn't catch the author's name.
Yes,
But yeah, that's the guy who wrote Don Quixote.
Yes,
Right.
yes. Now, The Tragedy of Life is a book of Spanish philosophy. The idea is that life is short, and to live it reasonably is just stupid. Live it with passion. And that ties into one of the big themes of this series, Romulan. Romulans are beings of passion. So this is tying in our Captain Rios. He lives something of a Romulan life. And
that's an interesting observation. Not sure I agree, but I like the observation. I'll certainly think about that.
A parallel, not the secrecy and some of the other stuff that I'll get to when we mention it, because that's another exciting thing I want to tie in. But the Don Quixote tie-in is another one, because I think that's Picard in this series.
Mm-hmm.
The Starfleet sees him as Don Quixote, tilting at windmills. And here he is. So
does that make this ship the Rocinante? Oh, wait, that's taken.
But here he goes on one final grand adventure. An old man trying to reclaim some glory in his life and do some good with what time he has left. So that was a fun little nod to both an insight into Rios and a tie into the theme of the show as a whole.
For sure. And bringing up Romulans, I'm going to move us through the episode here a little quicker. I think, Son, you were the one last week, I think, who mentioned this. Why are the Romulans, they know where Picard lives, why are they going after him? In this episode, they actually do.
Yep.
A scene, we see a lot of stuff going on with Javon, Laris, Picard himself, all the lessons who appear, and then out of so thoughts and impressions about this and how you think it fits the big picture of the show so far. Kate, start us off.
That's an interesting one. I gotta say, that scene just it was not that scene of Picard going all Second Amendment supporter with having the various phasers all over the house, which, let's be honest, when you live with two ex-Tal Shiar agents, that's what you're gonna get.
I love that. I kind of love that.
It's like watching a scene out of Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
There were two great things about that scene, though. One is the physicality of the acting, was extremely realistic for what you'd expect with these characters, that they are not at the top of their game, that Picard is not 20 years old, and they're getting battered around. And it really is only because they planned ahead for this possibility that they kind of came out on top. And then what makes it particularly interesting is because of this physicality that you're seeing in these other scenes, when you don't see that somewhere in Picard, it really stands out. And then
Can you give us
the
an
second
example of
thing
that?
huh?
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, you don't see it with Rios.
Hmm.
When you go back to that scene with the metal shard in his shoulder that the EMH removes, but doesn't actually treat the wound, and then he's able to use that shoulder normally, even though it was probably, a good 3 inches into that muscle.
Yeah.
And in the later scene when he's talking to his hologram about Picard taking this charter, you see him gesture quite wildly with that same arm. And that's not the kind of mistake an actor of his caliber would make. It's not the kind of mistake a director who is so intently focused on the physical expression of characters and making it real to these characters would make.
There might be some mix-up here because the EMH actually did his job up until the dermal regeneration, the skin repair, essentially. He's
I kind of
all
got that
the muscle
impression.
ligatures and tearing up to the point of up to the point of Rios going, I want a scar.
Yeah, he wants a scar.
It's like
That's
it's like
too legit to quit.
He's like he's 12. I just want the scar, man. It's cool.
He's Klingon.
Scars are cool. Yeah, exactly.
Scars are cool.
Yeah. And he's got a tattoo, which is new in Star Trek. So relatively.
Hey, do you want to know how I got these scars?
Yeah. Nice.
Lord.
Oh, that's perfect. Damn, that was kind of creepy, Ross.
Any other thoughts on the Romulans we see? He actually questioned one, and I thought it was really weird he gave as many answers as he did. What did you guys think? Justin?
You're muted, Justin.
Okay, there we go. Okay, you hear me now? Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I lost my train of thought. What was the question one more time?
The question, now I think I forgot the question.
Senator, what was the question?
About we learned about
Romulans.
Romulans here and questioning the one guy who told them, I think, more than I would have expected a Romulan to say before killing himself. But what did you think of that? Do you think that was realistic?
I thought maybe he wasn't, it might not have been an actual Romulan, because, I mean, why would a Romulan give all that information in the first place? Maybe it was another offshoot or something, because a normal Romulan wouldn't talk like that.
Well, if I don't know what I would call a normal Romulan, but I think don't fall into that mistake of all Romulans are alike, all Vulcans are alike, all Klingons are alike, because I think this show is trying to blow up that expectation.
Doing quite well with that, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
Sean, what about you?
Here's the reason I think he was so as minimally forthcoming as he was is because he knew who he was talking to. He was talking to 2XL Shi'ar there, okay? And there, I think it was more of a warning than anything else. That you guys...
He meant to say those if he was caught.
Yeah, I mean, right. It's like, you guys are in way over your head here. And the other side of this, too, notice how this scene played out, how it paralleled the scene on the cube at the same time, and basically with the same message here. This is everything that's been going on. I am liking your theory more and more the more I watch this show. It's like ingrained in my brain anytime something comes up that confirms your theory.
You're referring to my theory from last week that the Romulans created the Borg.
Yes. I am absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
I'm kind of convinced
I think by
now.
accident, but
Right.
but yeah.
Right, and we'll get to more. I'll explain a little bit more of that in a bit when we get to the scene and on the cube and discussion.
Well, that's
there.
coming up. That's coming
Okay.
up. So you won't have to wait too long. Anyone else want to weigh in on what we learned about Romulans, or the Tal Shiar, or specifically Laris and Javon in this scene?
Did anyone else have a mini panic attack when Javon got spat
Yes.
on?
Yes.
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 It's like, don't you do that to me! Don't you dare! No.
They definitely have turned into something of a fan favorite
Oh God!
amongst those who don't hate the show.
Yep.
And of course, the number one question everybody says, what happened to the dog? Why wasn't the dog there? Why did the dog shoot the guys?
Is that really the number one question? Because I don't know.
People are asking why the dog.
Oh, I'm sure
How
some are. But
how do we not have an answer to that? Did you see how that dog reacts when a stranger just walks onto the property? Oh my God, that is the least scary pit bull of all time. He was probably taking a nap. Just strolled in afterwards. Did I miss anything? What happened?
I think we can just attribute that to the fact that the dog is a really bad actor.
Yeah. I will say it was really cool to see Javon and Laris in action.
Yeah.
Laris was awesome as a sleuth in the last episode.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then to see both her and Javon really kicking ass.
Yeah, it was fun.
It really makes me
and
to
poor
Tal Shiar for my best friends.
Oh, absolutely.
And
It's
poor
also a
Picard
heavy-
just
This has got to
getting
be one of
beat
the better,
around.
but this has got to be one of the
Okay,
better
whoa,
battle
one at a
scenes.
time.
Oh, sorry.
One at a time. Let's start with
Skyping.
Index.
She's also not a half bad interrogator either.
No.
She literally just smacks the dude and she looks at Javon and she goes, "It's because he's from the north like you."
I
Like
love
you,
that.
and then she did a Gibbs smack, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Justin. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Wait, let her finish. Go ahead.
Okay, so this was a scene to set up an operative for the Federation for Admiral O.
Yeah, we skipped over that, didn't we?
Yeah. How is it that all of these guys just suddenly invade the chateau and then Girardi just shows up with a Romulan rifle in her hands to kill the last guy?
Yeah, that's a good point. The scene
Thank you,
you're referring to,
son.
of course, is where Commodore O appears at the Daystrom Institute, interrupting Dr. Girardi's classical music session, and asks her
Sicilian
to.
opera.
Oh, was it? Oh, wow, good call.
The one Hugh
didn't
hates,
pay
the
that much
one
attention.
Paul.
The one,
the
Hugh
one Paul hates.
That's a nice.
Hugh
That's a
loves.
nice. It really was that same opera.
I believe
Wow,
so.
okay,
That's
that was
the canon reference post on Reddit listed that one.
All right. So anyway, she spills the beans and tells Picard and Laris and Javon that she did spill the beans about her visits from Picard and what they talked about, except for one small thing, she says. But she does correct. She does out of and at just the right moment to save everybody. Is this suspicious? What do you think?
We've just been hearing you Skype the whole time.
Yeah,
You're
Yeah.
typing really, really
Yeah.
bad, my friend.
Oh, I am?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Comcast!
You're doing it.
Oh, no, mine
And then
is-
you're
I
freezing,
forget
and
it.
then you're going.
I do that normally in life.
What I was going to mention about this, it's got to be one of the better fight scenes in Star Trek I have seen from Star Trek in a while.
Yeah, and I wanted to point out something too to dispel this theory that Laris and Javon might flip. The scene where right when they tie up the Romulans to the chair, who I'm going to call Cupcake because he looks just like Cupcake from Star Trek 2009.
Star Trek 3?
Yeah. No. That's the tiny guy. This is from Star Trek 2009.
Yeah.
When in the bar fight. With,
right.
Cupcake. So I'm gonna call him. I'm just gonna call him Cupcake. So when Cupcake was tied to the chair, the first Javon's like ready to kill him right in the spot, and Laris stops him and says that's not our way anymore. We don't do that anymore. And she says it in Romulan, okay, to make the point. And I think that's very important. If there was any doubt about their true loyalty to Picard, I think it all disappeared at that very moment.
I agree.
Because of how sincere she was, and the fact that she said it to him in their own tongue. That was meant for him to understand and to hear. The other part about this, the Girardi thing, Girardi showing up, I don't think she's an operative. I do think that it was a very dopey trope that they threw in there. Her at the last second coming in and blasting the one they forgot about, okay? Which, by the way, tells us that as good as Lars and Jaban are, they're a little off their game, a little out of practice. So they should have expected that. But still, her showing up like that was very tropey. I'm giving it a pass. I wanted to talk more about...
So you're weighing in on she's not an operative.
I don't think she's an operative. If she is, she doesn't know it. That is what I think it comes down to. At the end of the... I was going to talk about the sunglasses on O because everybody's making a big deal about that. I think it's a big deal for a reason that other people haven't brought up. And I started to think about this era of Star Trek and photosensitivity of the eyes. And who else do we remember in this new era?
But you know what? If they make this a mirror, that's just as bad as what's George's worst theory about this, Justin? Whatever that is, it would be just as bad.
That's it.
Well, here's the other.
Here the other
Go back to
photosensitive person is 8472. Is 8472 another photosensitive species?
That would be also awful.
But they also hate the Borg and they hate technologies.
Well, and there's precedent for 8472 actually being on Earth, considering there was an entire episode of Voyager devoted to them trying to.
Yes, you really think that Star Trek Picard is going to lean on Voyager for story ideas?
I never got the impression in that episode, which I'm going complete blank on the episode, and I've seen it a million times. It's actually a pretty good episode. I've never got the impression that they were actually ever on Earth. I think what I got the impression is that they hacked Voyager's computers and got all their information from there. That's to make their little simulated Earth. So I don't think they ever actually were on Earth. I mean, that seems a little bit outside of their scope. But yeah, I mean, I do think those sunglasses, at least we're going to find out later, the reason she was wearing them, they play a part. I know it seems kind of dumb here, but it's quite possible that Girardi's a sleeper agent and doesn't know it. And it had something to do with whatever the heck she had under those sunglasses. I'm just throwing that out there.
I'm more
something that
willing,
could just as easily be accomplished with a mind meld.
Yeah, you know what? The more I think about this, the more I talk, the more stupid I think I sound.
But even that idea is better than a mirror universe idea. So
okay.
I'm going to go with the hypno glasses as a better
It's Hypnotoad.
No, but
I mean,
she is mind melded later on. One of the clips. They not.
Well, that argues for her not being a Romulan, but we'll see.
Well, see, here's what I took away from the glasses. I took away from the glasses that she was reading that the glasses were essentially a new type of pad. They were essentially Google Glass.
Oh my God!
Yeah, that they were literally her being able to disseminate security information.
It's a red herring that the producers threw in to make us all overthink things.
I actually think
door.
that is the case because
it's a door. That's what it is.
I think that she was just trying to look badass.
She
to
joined.
intimidate.
Okay, I've got it. She just started her own Huey Lewis and the News cover band. That's it right there.
That's the
what I'm
answer.
going
That's the answer, folks at home. Kate, do you want to weigh in on
with. Don't answer.
on
On the
Commodore
glasses.
O and her glasses?
I kind of figured she might just do it so people can't see her eyes.
Exactly.
You know, and then she's got them for the
Very
dramatic
simple.
reveal if she feels like she wants a little drama.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah, I think it's totally posing or posturing rather.
A completely
Um,
stoic Vulcan.
I'm cool.
Oh,
Joe
shit.
Cool. She's
Ross just
so
scared
cool.
me. Holy shit.
She's oh cool. She's oh cool. Okay, so
By the
let's
way,
move now.
I wanted to point out one
Oh,
thing too
Brian glasses.
about Tamlin Tamita, who plays O on this, and I am having a severe case of Mandela effect because I swear to God she's been on Star Trek before, but nope, this is her first time she's ever been on Star Trek.
I kind of hope she is a Vulcan because she's cool as a Vulcan, even an evil Vulcan.
Yeah, I actually
here.
I like the idea of an evil Vulcan, as you were, a villainous Vulcan working with Romulans. I like the competing agendas idea here. I don't like it. It's much more fun.
It was one of the few things that really worked in Enterprise, after all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. It's much more fun than just this. It's like all the Romulans work only with the Romulans, all the Klingons work only with the Klingons, and that type of thing. And it's
Well, we know that's not true.
Well, that's right, because we, of course, the
We
Duras.
had several Klingons work with Romulans in the past.
Right.
Mhm.
But, just in general, that idea of it, that everybody has, each species has all the exact same agendas and I like that it's getting mixed up a lot here. I agree. That's how I'm looking at it.
No, I think that's one of the things that gives this series some real verisimilitude and some real texture
Mhm.
that you don't see in other Star Trek series. So
Right.
I, for one, am enjoying that. Let's move on to the Borg Cube, or as it is known to the Romulans, the Artifact, or the Borg Reclamation.
Romulan Reclamation.
Romulan
I
Reclamation.
do gotta say, I love the opening sequences to this thing. Every time they show it, the way they bring it in frame is freaking awesome.
The way they take their time panning the camera around and through the cubes, just so that
They
you
have
don't
done it-
forget how monolithic this thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so do you think there's another reason, because they've done it again and again and again and again? Is there a deeper reason behind why they keep showing that visual over and over again? Any ideas?
It's because it's to show that the area that they're working in is so small compared to what the ship actually is.
Yes.
What they have secured of that ship is tiny compared to the ship itself.
Right. I totally agree.
Yeah, the bar cubes are so massive that, space station, the Russian space station. Fungus.
Okay, well, that being established is our working theory for now, unless anyone disagrees. Let's talk about what we actually see in the cube as the reclamation proceeds. We see finally a character from TNG whom we've been waiting. We've seen him in the trailers. That's Hugh the Borg, who is now
Yay.
not only just working on the reclamation site, but also is helping to run it.
He's all
I
grown
read
up.
someone say he's in charge of the whole thing, but I think he said he was just in charge of that unit. So
Yeah.
we may have to double check.
He was in
on
charge
that
of
one,
the security of that unit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He's the director of reclamation.
The executive director.
There you go.
there is also another part of this scene. We also find something out that backs up the Romulan Borg theory.
which is what?
That these are the only Romulans ever to be assimilated.
That he knows of.
That he knows
That
of.
they know
We've
of.
seen
Yeah.
Romulans being assimilated before in Voyager. With the cooperative, there are Romulans
My
among
sense
those liberated
is-
Borg.
Yeah. Well, and these may be the only surviving ones because it looks like they're all having a really hard time adjusting to being reclaimed, as it were. But it was still a relatively small number in that room. It sort of reminded me of a scene from a movie in an asylum where you just see people walking around. I like the one playing with the Rubik's Cube the best. But anyway, we're skipping ahead a little bit because the reason, Hugh actually seeks out Soji because he sees her talk to one of the nameless species that are being reclaimed from the cube, and she addresses him or her, we aren't quite sure about it, in their native language, and appears to be the only person in that group of people doing that work who treats the nameless with that kind of respect, and that catches Hugh's eye. And so he seeks her out to tell her that she gets a little bit of a reward, which is to speak to one of the reclaimed Romulans, who was also, I guess, an academic, very well versed in ancient Romulan mythology and the need, as I think Soji put it, to create a shared narrative and the power of that to potentially help these unassimilated Romulans rediscover their own
a shared mythology is what she said.
That's what she said. She corrected herself after Ramda took umbrage at the term mythology. Remember?
Well, I think it's if we're looking, if this is indeed a Borg origin story, aren't all origin stories of all species basically mythologies, if you look at them? Well,
sure. I just think that Ramda probably puts more stock in its essential truth than the term mythology encompasses, and that's why she corrects Soji when they have their face-to-face.
So if we look at this from a philosophical position, is not all cultures' religion based upon essential truths, not literal truths? Hey.
Yes,
we are talking about philosophy again.
And you're also playing off philosophy more than the medical aspect, which is what Soji was after. What Soji was after was treating them like they were Alzheimer's patients, and you're literally going to play music for them. That was the whole point of that conversation.
I feel like that's a little bit of an oversimplification. She uses the term shared narrative, and she also explains that it's to allow them to essentially reconstruct their sense of self. So, because that's what shared narratives do for a culture. I was watching this documentary that was talking about the rise of human society, civilization, from our former cave people or savanna dwellers, and that a key part of that was the notion of story, that once humanity grew to where you had aggregations of human beings larger than 150, that they needed to come up with some kind of a narrative framework to still connect all these people to one another. And this is natural human anthropological theory. The idea that, once you grow beyond 150, you can't really know everybody. And so you need something else to bind you. And the idea then of extended tribes, families, clans, ultimately what we know now as nations, that these constructs are essentially artificial, but perform a valuable role in creating the reality of a society as we know it. And I think it's that same theory that Soji's operating under here, that this is what these Romulans are really missing, and that might actually be an effective treatment for them.
I imagine the Tamarins would have something interesting to say about that.
Soji and Ramda at the artifact.
When the alcoves fell. I wanted to point out something that really made me go, holy shit, Carlos is right. And it set my mind really wandering about this, is when she talked about the fact that, let's just go with the fact that this is the only Romulan ship to ever be assimilated. Okay, we'll go with that. Even if they were able to assimilate a Romulan here and a Romulan there.
Or all the Romulans they took along the neutral zone outposts.
Mhm.
Well, yeah. If my theory on this is based on Carlos's idea that what she said was what not Daj. What's
Soji.
Soji. Okay,
Soji.
what Soji says about this is that
You can't just quite give up on Dodge, can you?
I can't. It's just it was hard enough to remember it. Now I've completely and now. So what she says is that it was the only known Romulans to be assimilated, and then something tragic happened or something happened and they don't know what it is. And my theory, and this is based on Carlos's theory, is that if the Romulans did create the Borg, they put something in them, some kind of code or something, that if the Borg go after them again, it just shuts down everything. It's kind of like that plague that they were going to use to destroy the Borg type thing with Hugh to begin with type thing. And this is why the collective realized what was happening with this one cube and cut that thing off completely as to avoid having the whole thing destroyed. Because am I making myself clear on this?
I think I understand what you're saying. We got another Icheb situation on our hands. You're saying these folks were sacrificial lambs used to disable this cube.
Well, no, not really. Not really. I think what happened is that the cube tried to assimilate a Romulan vessel. Okay, that many Romulans on there, and basically them trying to do this, it activated like a switch, like a kill switch in the Borg that would have basically just destroyed the whole collective. Collective realized what was going on, cut that cube off completely before it could do any more damage to the collective. That's my theory. Because with the Romulans having
what do we think of that? What do we think of that? Who wants to weigh in?
I'd like to backtrack a little bit. Just by a few minutes in the scene, when the Romulan is laying down that triangular tarot deck, mm-hmm. that first one that she lays down with the false door, that mm-hmm. is straight out of Rahansu, the 3-part novel series by Diane Duane.
Yeah,
I did finally
not pay a lot of attention to what was on cards, except for the one that had the 2 girls on it.
Yes,
I did notice
but
that one.
The false door. That is one of the really big parts of Romulan culture, that there's a false front door that you do not use.
Oh, yeah, that says a tradition in front of, yeah.
Only strangers use that door. Anyone who is familiar with the family knows to go to the back. And what does Soji do? She takes a chair and sits behind her. We're finally seeing bits of Romulan culture from beta canon being woven into the Romulan narrative, and the talk about creating a shared narrative, a shared mythos. That's one of the other things that Diane we wove into the Romulans in her story. They created their own shared mythos around the elements. And I wouldn't be surprised if we might see something like that later on as well. It's really exciting to me because I really, really loved that book series.
Yeah, I did too, although it's been a couple decades plus since I read them, so I don't remember them.
That clearly ties back into the philosophy book, the mm-hmm. ruling passion, the code of honor that all Romulans have. It hasn't been mentioned in canon yet that I know of, but that drew an immediate parallel to me that is really, really resonating, and I love it.
Well, if we can come out of Star Trek Picard with as much appreciation and knowledge about who the Romulans really are as we were able to come out of Next Generation with about the Klingons, I will be a very happy man.
I think that's exactly what we're seeing.
I gotta be honest, this series, we're only 3 episodes in. I don't think I've ever been able to talk about these deeper, so many deeper issues going on.
So
with this.
Meaty, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. You really can sink your teeth into this. God, I love it.
Yeah, I'm going to do a rewatch again just to look at each of the cards now, thanks to you, Ross.
Right.
So there's another couple of hours gone. Thanks a lot.
There is something we kind of overlooked though on the whole thing in Romulan space. What
You're going in and out, Justin.
How they completely cut off the events of Endgame? Voyager?
Well, you're assuming, I think, like many people have on the internet, that this cube was the one that we saw with Voyager. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case.
Blew up.
I think the cube was already in the area, and whenever the transport network got destroyed, it got cut off from the collective, and that's how the Romulans got it.
I've seen nothing to indicate whatsoever that cube is the one in Picard is anywhere near Federation space. I've seen nothing.
No, it's definitely in Romulan space.
Right, exactly. So why would people think that it's the cube from Endgame? Because they showed up right outside.
I've read a lot of people who think that's the case.
My thinking was it was already in the space, but it wasn't that cube, but it was cut off from the collective when the transport network got shut down.
Well, and the thing really, because I've thought about that too, is it important? I mean, the fact is it's there and it was cut off, and so they're reclaiming it.
I want to know.
I think people are giving Voyager way too much credit for the amount of damage they did.
Well, yeah, but
in general, I mean, I've seen so many people think that Voyager destroyed the entire Borg collective at the end of Endgame. No,
they just wounded them severely. But
if you go by the books, no.
Well,
in the books, the Borg eat Pluto.
Pretty much, yeah.
And he's my favorite dog in Disney.
Man. I'm about to say the same thing. What about Gillies? I hope Goofy's okay. God.
Poor Goofy.
And spoiler, they killed Janeway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. She may be the most badass of the captains, frankly.
But she comes back later on.
I think a lot of people are actually missing another important point in this discussion between Soji and the mythicist. And that is that when Soji talks to her, she calls it the news. And every instance that she talks about this event happening, she talks about it happening later in the future. She speaks as if it is going to happen, not that it has already happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think, oh God, we're going to have time travel again.
Oh God! I do not think you will see that either.
No, I agree. I kind of agree with Son.
I think all those Star Trek-y tropes, you're not going to see them in this series.
Oh, but she said, "I know you." She said, "I know you from tomorrow." What? I mean, come on. What does that mean?
From the future.
I'm like the double rainbow guy. What does it mean?
We'll find out.
I mean, remember, Borg cubes have two things. They have a neural plexus and a temporal plexus. So take your pick.
I have a solar plexus.
I think that sure we could interpret it as involving some form of time travel, and I really hope not. But we could also look at it in terms of part of the Borg identity as a shared consciousness. It extends beyond a single person's perception and lifespan, and that might actually change your perception of time as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that past, present, and future really lose the distinction that they would lose have for an individual.
I'm starting to think this show is just too fucking smart for me. I'm really getting concerned about it.
Don't worry, I'm sure they will eventually dumb it down enough for us. I have faith in that.
Well, they certainly haven't. If you go to social media, you can see they really haven't yet. So
I think this is actually very much a Michael Chabon trademark.
Yeah.
His novels do this kind of thing quite a bit, where they throw in like big mythological set pieces in it, and you're like totally confused about how it all fits in, and how come in Cavalier and Clay everything is absolutely realistic and feels historical, except for the fact that they have an actual golem in the basement, which is a part of Jewish mythology. And so it ends up having playing an important role in the overall story. So it's definitely something we've seen from Michael Chabon before.
Yeah, it's all, again, we're back to this discussion of the show in terms of a novel put on into the form of a television series. A lot of shows have tried to do this, and to basically, make it more of a serial type novel with chapters and everything. And I don't think I've seen a series do it as effectively as this. Like when you look at Game of Thrones, okay, yeah, Game of Thrones, of course, was adapted from novels, but Game of Thrones doesn't play out the way this show plays out, where it's literally like you're reading a novel on your television screen.
Battlestar Galactica did a decent enough job of it.
That's very true too. But I really think that just the depth of what they're doing with this one, where especially in the setup of the first 3 chapters here, which is very much like a novel, where you have all these tangentially connected stories that you really don't see how they're all connected.
I hear what you're saying.
Together.
I think one of the reasons you see that working here possibly better than you saw in Galactica was that, as we learned many years later, they were making that shit up as they were going along.
Yeah.
They came up with these tantalizing clues, but really had no idea how they were going to play out until they decided to make them play out. And that's why you're seeing it work so effectively here, because they have planned it out. They know.
They're also not bound by networks needing 24 episodes in a season.
Right.
They can have a start, middle, and end in 10 episodes and be a lot more effective.
Yeah.
They're also not bound to the norms, the standards of network television either. Where I don't even if this, we weren't talking about Star Trek here, okay. If we were talking about like a more accessible, less niche genre, just a straight up drama, I don't think you could do a show like this on a network television. Even like AMC, I don't think you could do this in this format. I don't think audiences would really kind of have the patience enough for it. But here is on All Access, this is a type of format where it will thrive on, and I'm loving it. So
Breaking Bad did pretty well on AMC.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
And that was very much a serialized story.
And
right, but I
Better Call Saul, I think, also successfully does that.
Right, but here's the thing about that. I'm a huge Breaking Bad fan. I literally watch Breaking Bad, the entire series. I do it once a year, straight through. Seriously, because honestly,
where do you find the time, Sean? Honestly,
you're going to hate hearing this, but I drive a lot, and I put my phone right in my fucking
oh my god!
So,
oh my god, folks at home, do not do this.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
And here's the
Public
thing.
service announcement.
And even with all of that, I'm still one of the better drivers in Las Vegas. Thank you very much.
Public service announcements. Do not do what Sean O'Halloran does.
Don't do it, kids.
So,
do not do it.
Super Geeks endorses safe, responsible driving.
Driving, exactly. That's our official corporate stance.
I just don't think. I mean, what I always notice about Breaking Bad is that like a lot of the especially like when they would give you something in the beginning of an episode that you're like, what does this have to do with anything? It would kind of come together at the end of the episode. Obviously, the show was serialized, but except for like in season 2 with the pink bear. Remember the pink bear in season 2?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That whole thing does not come together into the very
end, and then it's like,
season.
Whoa,
holy shit, what just happened? Right, exactly, for the big setup. But this is. There's like so many different subplots and tangents going on that I think are just all being brought together in this, and that it's done incredibly effectively. And like I said, it's probably the most unique way of telling this type of narrative I've seen, is what I'm getting at here.
All right. So, Sean, you pointed out earlier that the scene between Ramda was actually intercut with the interrogation of
Yep.
the Romulans and the Romulan attack on Chateau Picard. One of the things that they made sure synced up between those two storylines was the reference at the same time by Ramda and the captured Romulan agent calling them Daj/Soji, the Destroyer.
Yep, the story of worlds, right?
And we don't know what that means. Do we know what that means? What do we think it means?
Kate, what do you think it means?
Or should we wait until our predictions SmackDown to figure that out? Or do you want to take a whack at it, Kate?
Well, that's what really strikes me is I don't know Chabon's work, but you just mentioned that he drew a lot on Jewish stories for some of his novels, and I did notice he made a couple of references to what could be seen as Hindu type stories with the mandala and with the twin sisters, the Destroyer. You have the there is a well, it's the god Shiva, the Destroyer and creator of the universe. And so you get this twin of destruction and creation simultaneously. And so if one of them has to bring destruction, I think we're going to see creation as part of it too.
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah,
with that
it's
entirely.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good observation, because the Destroyer, I think, clearly does have a bigger meaning beyond the literal, what we think of, it's not just destruction. And the Hindu triumvirate that you're talking about, the other two that are parts of that are Brahma and Vishnu. Brahma being the creator and Vishnu being the preserver. So that those being the sort of the three aspects of I guess the creation, upkeep, and destruction of the world as we know it. So, and interestingly, how many sides were there to those cards that she was putting down?
The triangle. Yeah, it's a triangle.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you're on. I think you're on the right track here, Kate.
Well,
Yeah,
triangular
I agree.
pictograms also feature heavily in Romulan art and design.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at the Warbird; they're all pretty much triangular too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's as Kate was talking, it was making me think about, again, going back just to the title sequence, okay, about broken pieces, okay, being put back together. Well, that's destruction and rebirth right there. I mean, these metaphors, these visual metaphors are all over the place. Even if we're talking about even Data, Data's destruction brings a rebirth.
Right. Yeah.
It's quite possible that, like I said, what's the interpretation? But what got me thinking about this was that as these two parallel narratives are going at the same time between what's going on with Rhonda and with Cupcake, is that
Hendruff is his name, Lieutenant Hendruff.
Right. What was going on here was that they're both talking about, the Destroyer. Did they come out and say the Destroyer of Worlds? Is that?
I don't think they said Destroyer of Worlds.
Okay. Well,
I think it was just the Destroyer. But
okay,
Shiva, of course, is known as the Destroyer of Worlds.
I'll be willing to make that connection then, because I think you have Rhonda and both Cupcake and Rhonda both worried about, their worlds being destroyed by Soji. And Rhonda, even though she is a Romulan, she's also a Borg. And of course, Cupcake is a straight up Romulan. So we're talking about two cultures both referring to her as the Destroyer and both fearing her for the same thing. So, Yeah, perfect, Justin. By the way. So yeah, I'm getting like it's just.
But there's a different reaction.
More to chew on as I.
There's a different reaction where the Romulans want to destroy her before she and every one of her kind before they're able to destroy anything. But Ramda, she pointed the weapon at her, but then she turned it on herself to commit suicide.
Right.
So
she also wanted to know which one she was.
Yeah.
Right. She's very conflicted. Is the thing. She clearly.
But if she was afraid of her and her status as the destroyer, why then would she opt to kill herself instead of try to kill her before she did anything?
But here's the question. How does Ramda know she's an artificial life form?
We don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point.
Unless
her having been a Borg, just like, remember, Picard still had some Borg sense in First Contact.
He probably still does now.
And yes,
Yeah,
and so the same is maybe just as true for Ramda.
Yep.
Yeah, but where would the Borg know that these two exist as artificial life forms?
Well, that's the connection we don't know
This
yet.
goes back to my theory about. It does it. I'm getting confused with my own theories.
This goes back to my theory that there's going to be timey-wimey shenanigans.
That is not this show. That is not this show.
I hope you're wrong because
I know.
I really hope.
Oh no! Don't
Please.
mistake. I hope I'm the hell wrong too. But look at all of the conversation that went on there. She seems to know that Soji is an artificial life form. She specifically calls Soji the destroyer. I mean, she seems to foretell of the events of the destruction as if they are going to happen in the future. And then when worse comes to worse, instead of destroying her, she questions: which sister are you? The one who destroys, or the other? And then tries to remove
or the
herself,
one who is destroyed, I think is what she said.
Or tries to remove herself from the equation rather than wait for the answer.
Yeah,
I think that's an interesting theory, definitely. Okay, so let's wind up talking about the episode before we move into a couple of discussions and then the SmackDown. So we learn as Rafi, surprise, joins the the crew for her own reasons. She assures Picard's. We also learn that apparently there is a dark web in the Federation known as Free Cloud, and somehow Bruce Maddox is there. And she wants to go to Free Cloud. Doesn't exactly explain why. Maybe that's where they get all the best drugs, just like on the dark web. Who knows?
Maybe she's got a gambling problem.
What did you guys think of Free Cloud? What do you think that is?
It's the new Nimbus 3.
Oh God, I hope not.
Or it is Nimbus 3. It makes sense. It is right on the border of the Romulan Empire.
It looked kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese, but okay, for a little bit of sun. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there.
My sense is that it's this place that, like the dark web, that's where stuff goes on that isn't sanctioned by anybody.
Will we see Ferengi?
Oh, that's a good question.
I would bet. I mean, it's place like
I don't know.
Trying to sell this. I mean.
Yeah, I
don't know.
Yeah, they really stuck a big fat mystery in this, didn't they? I mean, with this one on top of all the other ones.
Yeah.
This is rife for speculation, to say the least.
Sounds like it's like Free Cloud, Free Ports, Tortuga.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like it's an independent port for anybody to call on.
It's Mos Eisley.
Yes.
Tortuga.
No, it's definitely Mos Eisley.
I'll go with that. Okay.
All right, we'll see.
That was
how
literally the first thought I had when she mentioned Free Cloud.
So, are we going to talk about Narek and Rizzo in this episode, or what? And back to my theory.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're gonna talk about that when we do our check-in on the. I did think about it while I watched it, but we'll cover that when we get to the SmackDown in a few minutes. Let's talk about a couple of things before we move on to the SmackDown. One of the things that that there was some noise about on the interwebs this past week were about, again, the growing curiosity about what connection there is between the Romulans and the Borg. And we certainly see that sort of expand. We get some more information about that, although a lot more questions as well in this episode. Are there any other Romulan plus Borg things going through your head based on what you saw in the end is the beginning?
Yes, but I have to wait for the SmackDown.
Okay, maybe we'll wait for the SmackDown then to get to
SmackDown.
that. The next topic that has come up, Son, I'm going to turn this one over to you because you brought this up based on a conversation with Travis Linton, who's an occasional guest with us on the Super Geeks and on this show. And the title you put on it in Trello was Death Permanence, Great Storytelling or Missed Opportunity. Why don't you give us the lowdown on what this topic is about and what you think it has to do with what we're seeing unfold in Star Trek Picard.
Okay, so Travis basically made a post in the Super Geeks saying that watching the last episode, he started to agree more with Sean that it impacts the story more that Data is dead, that there is a death to Data instead of Data just being a sum of his programming shifted into a new body. And I can agree with that from the standpoint of where the story itself is going, but I also think it's a possible missed opportunity for another kind of exploration. And that is more transhumanist ideas, where when you start to become more machine than man, in artificial limbs, artificial organs, all that kind of stuff. There's always
the idea being that your mind is outgrowing your body, right?
Right. That, well, and it's not just that. It's that what happens when you can't live unless you are affixed into a machine. Are you the soul of who you are still, or are you now a machine? This was actually brought up specifically in The Next Generation, and I don't remember the episode, but
it was Measure of a Man. It was Measure of a Man.
Also,
where they talked about whether Data had a soul.
There was an entire episode where this crazy-ass doctor violated Data by putting himself into Data.
Data's grandfather, quote unquote.
Oh, is that Ira Graves? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, that's him.
Why do I remember that? Oh my God.
I do not remember
I
that
am
episode.
such a nerd.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even realize it
Enterprise-
until I have Tourette's syndrome responses like that.
The Enterprise
God.
was showing up for a checkup on the Doctor. Apparently, he had a hand in Data's creation with Dr. Sung. He lures him in with promises of talk about his father, deactivates him, puts his mind in Data, but his neural net starts to break down with all the extra neuroactivity. So he transfers himself into the computer and is nothing but data, computer data at that point.
Right, and that's where I bring up that's why I bring up this point specifically, because that's what I brought up in the conversation, is that in that episode of The Next Generation, he fit into Data. Data just couldn't compensate for all of the extra. He couldn't compensate for all the extra personality stuff going on.
He was even emotional.
Right. Because of that, Data's character was actually able to portray emotions. The problem was that because of what we're seeing now in Discovery, you have very specific limitations that have been set on Federation computers, not Data, Federation computers. So after Ira is dead and he has to transfer his brain back into the Federation computers, what does he lose? His soul, his personality, everything. It's scrubbed from that information because of those computers.
I also think.
What if those computers were allowed to house that personality, that interaction? Could you call on Ira Graves to say, I need help with this situation, just like we've seen with them do with holoprograms?
then we'd get Barkley hooked up to that supercomputer thing.
Oh, the Nth Degree, one of my favorite
yeah,
episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
I mean,
episode.
I see where you're coming from with the story, and that's a good thing with this story. But I also look at the continuation of Data in B4 from like the 09 Countdown comics and think, what if that B4/Data interacted with Maddox to create a Federation version of what the Vulcans have in the Katra?
Yeah, you mean, so basically what you're saying, if I'm understanding this correctly, is that, okay, Katra, for lack of a better word, is the soul for Vulcans. So what you're basically talking about is exactly what I was talking about, which is that basically that Data was ultimately his evolution. Data actually has, and if you will, an artificial, only in the sense of the fact that it's created, a soul, the same way the Doctor does. I mean, again, back to being more than the sum of their programming on both ends. Okay, now we're getting into the metaphysical here. Oh, now we're talking.
And I think definitely this show is going down that road.
Yep,
it's going to go down the metaphysical road. It's not going to go timey-wimey. It's not going to go these places you guys are theorizing about. It's going to go into metaphysics and what is humanity really,
Yeah. It's also something Star Trek really hasn't touched on as much. When we get into transhuman ideas, Star Trek has always erred on the side of the human. Yes, usually when machines start to go past that basic computational stage, they usually take a turn for the antagonists, with the exception of Data and a few others. But Star Trek until Discovery, we really don't see a lot of use of cybernetic enhancements by way of prosthetics or things like that until we get people like Arium, like Detmer, where we actually see metal and prosthetic used to repair and in some cases enhance. The closest we got before that was Geordi, but up until First Contact, it was an appliance that he put over his face like a pair of glasses.
Well, I was going to say that in general, Star Trek has, with the exclusion of the black sheep of the family, Deep Space Nine, has generally avoided metaphysics entirely. I mean, it's not always, but it hasn't been approached very much at all. And that's one of the things I loved about Deep Space Nine, is it broke the mold on things like that. It was so much more unique.
We're not just talking about cybernetic enhancement either, because for all intents and purposes, this is exactly what the Trill are.
Yeah. Right.
But that's the thing, son. I think in Star Trek storytelling, at least up until this point, they're always going to err on the human side of things.
Right. This is why I think that the conversation of having a Katra-like thing within the Federation is a missed opportunity.
Well, is it missed, though?
Go ahead, Justin.
Well, I mean, I think we may see it. We may see it explored.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I honestly think we will, because just the way they're setting up this notion of, how one positronic neuron can contain, and they call it fractal, which, just like in fractal geometry, each piece of a fractal geometric form is actually the same as the whole thing. So that's the theory or the parallel that they're trying to draw in how his positronic neurons are supposed to work. Some level of discussion about this.
Oh, you froze there for half a second there, Carlos. Hang on, okay.
We lost him.
It's going, guys.
I think it is. He's gone. All right. What I was going to say, you're back. Okay.
Well, kind of.
Kind of. He's kind of frozen. Poor guy. Okay. Just throw an edit on this one to fix it.
Refresh your Wi-Fi settings.
Reverse polarity.
Oh, do something with the phase inducers.
Take the pie out of the oven.
Carlos,
Take the
buddy, it's
pie
bad.
out.
It's bad, buddy. It's bad.
Yeah, you're not even moving now. You're just frozen in all shame.
Can you hear us? You can hear us.
Boost the signal.
Well,
Stop doing a robot.
I would like to know from our guest, what do you think about about this discussion?
Yeah, exactly.
I think you've all hit on a really great idea, and it actually all of your points of view tie together brilliantly. Ross, looking at, for instance, the concept of finally going beyond the human perspective through the androids and the Borg and things of that nature. That is what the science fiction genre has just moved into, starting in about 2014. And so that would line Picard up with contemporary science fiction. Then Sean, we've got kind of the metaphysical aspect, and that ties back to the concept of destruction and rebirth, which could also be seen as change.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right.
And then we get into the question of identity constantly changing. And I think we might be actually looking at a point in the Trek universe where people's idea of themselves and what they could be changes completely because of the presence of these synths and in the Borg. And, you know, does somebody lose their soul when they become a part of the collective? Do they get it back? Or does it just change its nature? Things like that.
Could we be finally touching on what the Zhat Vash fear?
Might be. That's damn it, Ross. That's a good point.
You know, and as what we fear change, all of us, no matter whether you're Romulan, human, whatever. We all fear change. You know, we fear just changes in life. You know, from going on when you're a little kid to going into high school to going into college to being off on your own to having a family to, you know, getting old and ultimately dying. We all fear these things. It's all these changes.
TNG episode where a guy was being persecuted by his planet, but because he was beginning to evolve, he was beginning to change at a genetic level into this new form of being. He had a romance with Crusher, and then at the end he was this
Transfigurations, I believe, is the episode.
That's it.
That's a great episode. I love that episode.
What we're on the is that what we're kind of tiptoeing into here?
Yeah,
I think we are because
Picture?
yeah. We're going to merge with Vision.
But also, another thing is some of the best of Trek deals with change, so it's also not a surprise that they're reaching back to that. You know, Wrath of Khan dealt with the change surrounding aging and no longer being who you were and having to kind of embrace who you are and who you will be in the future. Undiscovered Country was about changing geopolitical relationships, but also about, you know, letting go of who you were in the past and embracing a new future.
yes,
And Picard's going through that right now.
You know,
yeah, exactly.
And that's the real hope of Trek, is that this change can be exceedingly painful, but can also bring about something that was much better than what came before.
The change isn't the end; it's just another beginning.
Right? Hey,
Hey, you know,
It's the title of the episode.
It is.
Yep, and look at what is it? What at the last title crawl at the very end of the motion picture? The human adventure is just beginning. You know, I mean, it's all right there. Kate, thank you for being on the show.
Yes,
and you know they even played that nod to the TNG right there at the end of the episode, just to sweeten the pot. I don't know about anybody else, but I got chills when I heard that.
Oh yes. Yeah,
I cried.
absolutely.
Since Carlos seems to have trouble getting back, how about we move to
I've got it pulled up, but yeah, that seems just.
How about we move the discussion into Soji's reaction after everything. She calls her mother.
But it's a
There's her
different
mother
mother.
again.
It's a different person, ain't it?
No, it's the same actress. I checked the listing in the credits, but it comes up just like it did with Dodge, and like with Dodge, it kind of lulls her into a trance, and then she passes out. And here we are once again with more evidence that there's something guiding these two, and there are fail-safes in place to kind of keep them centered and focused, or to provide safe avenues of escape.
Or it's safe. I don't know, because maybe not safe avenues of escape. Maybe just safe avenues of progression. When you've hit this checkpoint in the game, take.
So are you saying
it's not safe to go alone? Take this. It's Zelda reference, by the way. But because remember, with Daj, she was like, go back to Picard, go back to Picard, go back to Picard. She wasn't saying, no, just go home. Just go home. And she was actually
Get a dog.
right.
He's back.
He's back.
So what you're saying is that Dodge and Soji's mother were the preserver?
No, I think Dawson Sosa's mom. I think that she's just a. I think she's a computer construct.
Yeah, she's a simulation.
Right, exactly.
No. You missed the point. The whole point is the Hindu triumvirate.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
The
There you go.
preserver.
Well, I think
I thought you were talking about
Maddox is the
Service
preserver.
Trek.
Like he's literally preserved some part of data. So yeah, I think Maddox is the third part of that triumvirate.
Yeah, but but when we look at the interaction that goes on, you literally have her trying to preserve the two. First by telling Dodge
whom?
the
mom?
her mom. The mom.
But she's not real.
By telling Dodge, go back to Picard. You're safe with Picard. Find Picard. You're safe with Picard.
Sure.
And then when Soji is freaking out, even though she's telling Soji all about how Dodge is fine and all this stuff, there's that slow, you need to go to sleep, just go to sleep, because that freaking out, that turning Soji off, that putting her to sleep is a preservation from her freaking the hell out.
I think we're the only.
Yeah, but that's as a result of Maddox. She's just a simulation. They made that not explicit, but pretty clear.
I think right. I think she's just an extension of Maddox.
Mm-hmm.
Is what it comes down to. It's Maddox. I think probably programmed this simulation to guide the twins and protect them as much as they could. A fail-safe, exactly.
Like if the program detects that the twins are in a particularly stressful situation, it automatically adjusts itself to as a fail-safe device. Like Juliana in The Next Generation, when she got injured, she automatically shut down.
How is that not exactly what I just said?
Well, I think
because you're saying that she is somehow an independent agent operating here.
Right, exactly.
And what we're saying is we agree she's playing the role of preserver, but she's doing it as a tool of Maddox, not as a
I never said she was independent.
Well, that's what we
I said she was part of the triumvirate there.
She's not, though. She's a tool.
She's like the
Maddox is the part of the triumvirate.
Right.
He's the one. He's a puppet master. He's the one that's
if that's the case, then Maddox is literally both the destroyer and whoever the other one is.
No, Dodge and Soji are the destroyers.
Yeah.
But he made both of them, did he not?
Supposedly.
He made both of them. There might be more than this stuff. We don't know.
But again, we're talking about Dodge and Soji here, who are. He may have, yes, technically made them, but they are. Again, more than the sum of their programming as well.
And they're possibly not alone. They're looking for a nest.
Right.
There might be even more synths out there like them.
Mm-hmm.
Hence the fear and they're looking for something. Daj was going to the Daystrom Institute to work there and look for something. Soji is on the artifact looking for something. And as she's getting closer to the information she needs, more knowledge is opening up in her mind.
As
She
she
knows
needs it.
things that she needs when she needs them that she didn't know when she was going in.
True.
What are they
Sure.
looking for?
Yeah, that's the big question for sure.
She
Um,
wants to know why that Borg cube was disabled. We know that much.
Right.
So what else? I can't wait to find out.
Yeah,
me
me
either.
either.
Okay,
be a hell of a scene.
we're moving into our final segment, the Picard predictions Smackdown. So I hope you've all been working on your predictions this week. We're going to check in on the ones that we've made so far and do a little status start. Of course, the one Sean alluded to earlier, his prediction that Narek and Rizzo, brother and sister, are actually also doing the dirty deed.
Yes.
You still think that's how I put juries out on this, because I don't think, as of last week, we didn't necessarily see enough. But do you feel like we got more evidence about that in this episode?
All I'm saying is Jamie and Cersei Lannister. That's all I'm saying. I mean, it was pretty over the top. You know,
Cue the Pornhub music.
There seems to be a little bit more going on here than just a brother and sister normal relationship here.
I mean, Romulans are all about passion, so.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Apparently, they don't have Tinder on Romulus.
Well, definitely not now, since Romulus is Tinder.
Oh, right. Well, they got Tinder.
Nice.
Thank you. I'll be here all week.
They're perfect.
Oh, no.
Okay, so what's next, Carlos?
All right. So I assume we're still at the jury's out, or are more people
Yes,
chiming in on this one?
I'm definitely still the jury is out.
Star Trek's definitely going edgier. I don't think we're going to go that edgy.
I tend to agree with Joe. I'm sorry, with Ross.
What?
I
The
said Joe
eyebrows.
because he's next on my list. He's next on my list. That's
The
all.
eyebrows,
So-
not the hair. The eyebrows.
Yeah, it's not the hair. You've got the very, individualized eyebrows of doom for sure. Okay, so number 2 on the predictions list is Joe's theory that Maddox created Dodge from a bit of data that survived the destruction of the Scimitar in Nemesis, for which I think there's no evidence. Maddox had plenty of other opportunities to get these kinds of samples from data that it didn't have to, require sifting through, the detritus in the wake of the destruction of a Romulan vessel. Anyone else have any ideas about that?
I'm leaning. Go ahead.
I think he probably used what he had for B4. I don't think he got anything from Romulan vessel. That's just too far out there. If he used B4,
You're putting a lot of stock, Justin, in B4 and in lore.
Because both had data memories. So what would be the best way to get
Except
complete?
what they've established is that those neurons allow that to be recreated. So that sort of obviates the need for a B4. It obviates the need for a lore.
Yeah, but we also have two
plow
sisters.
that ground already.
But we still also have two sisters. My theory.
What does that have to do with it? That doesn't have anything to do with a lore and a
but
B4.
brothers. Yeah, but one good, one not good.
We're not seeing any evidence of that in these two sisters.
Lore definitely.
I think
was the
you're
destroyer.
reaching. I think you're reaching.
Or was the destroyer?
I think but there's no other two pieces of the triumvirate there. So
Yeah, but who would have access to lore other than Maddox?
well, we don't know. But Maddox wasn't trying to recreate lore; he was trying to recreate data.
I think the problem with Joe's theory and this theory is that it's like Carlos has said, that there's literally no evidence to suggest this yet. It could have come from anywhere. We haven't, and there's a million other. They
More
haven't-
plausible anywhere.
Yeah, they haven't given us any reason to believe that that's where it came from. And I think right now it doesn't really matter. right now. I think we're at the point where it's like, okay, I think we can all agree on the fact that yes, he did have them, and somehow he's made the twins.
I mean, he had years literally to collect those samples from Data.
I mean, Data could actually send him a copy of his programming, at his
It's not programming; it's the actual neuron.
They could have sent him a copy of the programming plus the neuron.
You're talking about extracting a piece of his positronic net, a piece of his brain.
Why not? I mean,
okay, I'm gonna change the status from no evidence to wishful thinking on that one, Justin. So we'll check in again next week on that one. We'll move now to number 4, which is I put it down as Sean and Sons, but Son gave me a tongue lashing that it wasn't. I didn't exactly characterize it correctly, so I'll just go right to the prediction, which was that I think Sean was the one who said this, that Juliana, Data's mom, could have been the one that was the source of the neurons.
No, if that came across, that is not what I intended at all. It was more like back to the no evidence. It was a random thought, not really a speculation.
Okay.
I really don't believe that that's the case.
Okay, so can I list that as a self smackdown?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. All right, done. All right, we'll move now to number 5, also from Sean, that Maddox somehow had enough of Data to try to reconstruct it. I listed that as possible. I think it's still possible. Others?
It's still possible.
We have no evidence to the contrary.
All right. Well, he had to get it had to come from somewhere. So that's
if he's got enough
to most likely place.
If we're going to this whole fractal idea again, and he's got enough to make these twins and possibly more because they're looking for more of them, then I would think that he would have enough to recreate Data, not necessarily in a physical form or something else, but yeah, I mean, it's quite possible. I think the more I think about the whole fractal thing, the more I think it's even more of a plausible idea.
Sure.
Well, then they brought Data back as a hologram.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Like I said,
I think that goes back to I just don't think you're going to see a living Data. I just don't. For exactly the reasons that Sun was talking about earlier, I just think it minimizes, it undermines the drama behind his sacrifice.
I agree. I don't think he'll be living either. I think he'll just be there for informational purposes only, like a recall. Like this is like a computer for information.
I still think that's a reach. Okay.
So Jor-El?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But there's no emotion or any type of response like that. I mean, back in the Data that
I just think it's cheap. I just think that's too cheap. Okay.
Yeah, Data's gonna come back as Marlon Brando. Perfect.
Wait, who played Jor-El in the new version of Superman?
It was still Marlon Brando.
No.
Russell Crowe, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Russell Crowe.
Right, Russell Crowe. Right. Okay, gotcha. All right, so now we move to I think I wrote this down wrong. I think this was Ross who said we should be seeing more political intrigue between the Romulans and the Federation, specifically around artificial intelligence, synthetic life, etc., and listed that as likely. Since we're still seeing that play out, particularly with Commodore O in this episode. Anyone else want to weigh in on that prediction?
And in the last episode, when Picard walks into Starfleet, says, Maddox created artificial life. Oh, yeah, you are on the thick of it. Romulans are involved. Well, that's about as thick as it gets.
All right, so still likely. Now we move to Sun's 3-part prediction. Number 1, that's Jaban and Laris will betray Picard. I listed it as increasingly unlikely, because of their defense of him, putting their own lives in danger during the Romulan attack in this latest episode. Son, how do you feel about that this week?
I'm fine with that being removed
Okay.
because
So we'll-
I think it's shifted.
Okay, we'll put that down as smacked down. All right. And then the next piece from Sun is speculation that Romulans obtained Picard's DNA, and because they had that information, had what they needed to know in order to activate his terminal disease that we learned about in the last episode. How are we feeling about that? I listed it as speculation.
Possible.
It's still complete speculation, but you have to remember they created a Picard clone. They obviously have his DNA.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about that. They also considered that a failed experiment. So
true. They also have access to a Borg cube, which has a what? The central plexus, neural plexus, or whatever the hell. And what was Picard at one point?
That's an overreach. I'm sorry. That's just like a fan wanky.
That's literally 100%
thing.
Romulans being extra.
Well,
Let's be
that is
honest.
one of my favorite of your observations. I will grant you that about Romulans being extra. I just don't think this is. I just don't think that's the kind of. It would be a stunt for Michael Chabon. I just don't see him doing that. His twists are solidly grounded in sort of dramatic reality, and that's just like this out of left field kind of thing that really ultimately ends up not being unnecessary. I just don't think
You know what, son? I think you know what that's one of the best left field theories I've heard in a while. Let's hope it's not but that's a good theory.
Okay, I'm gonna change it in status to out of left field. Is that all right, son? For
Sure.
now? Okay, we'll keep tabs. I don't think it's been smacked down, but we'll see whether it proceeds in that direction. Okay, and then finally, Son's last prediction, which is that Maddox, and this is another one I think you said I didn't quite get right. Medicated as fail-safe / death if she became aware of being an android. Do you want to finesse that a little bit for me based on our conversation?
Basically the idea behind this theory is that yes, he retrieved Data's neuron that had all of Data's memories and all of Data's interactions. This would include his interaction with Juliana, who had this she was made to be as human as possible, to the point of having a fail-safe. So when I'm talking about fail-safe, I'm not necessarily meaning the fail-safe. I mean the cover of being human, and applying that to both Daj and Soji for whatever they're looking for.
Okay, so you see it as kind of that they're on a secret mission. That kind of goes along with what Ross was saying
In
earlier.
uncharted space.
Right, and that I think the way you put it to me earlier before the broadcast, that it basically, rather than a fail-safe per se, that it was a cover story for them to totally and utterly believe that they were
human
living beings, biological beings. Okay, I mean, I think phrased that way, that takes it out of speculation and more towards a possibility for me. So I'm going to list it as possible unless anyone has objection to that.
Well, I kind of thought the fail-safe was the activation is what I thought the fail-safe was. When
interesting.
In a crisis mode like she was in, that when it's the fight or flight, when she has no choice but to fight, that's when she activates.
Well, see, this is why I build it off of the Juliana theory. That he sees what Juliana was through Data's information, and then creates his own basically cover story. And then instead of having a deactivation when the failsafe is tripped, the failsafe floods the creation.
Right. And the other side of this too is that I think that her pursuing her studies at Daystrom Academy. There's nothing coincidental about this.
Mm-mm.
I think this is clearly planted for her to do, and that there's clearly more going on there. That that another mystery that needs to be discovered, and she didn't even realize it, but she was there to discover that mystery. Is what I
Don't forget the mother. That's another bit of a failsafe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Either course corrects or calms,
Right.
keeps them from freaking out. It's there to kind of guide them and act as a smokescreen, so that if they are kind of having a panic attack, this image of the mother is there for others to observe and see. Okay, that looks normal.
Right.
Okay. All right. Then we'll move to our next prediction. This is Sean's, that Juliana is still around, which I listed as speculation. What do we think of that this week?
I don't think there's any reason that she isn't. I'm not convinced we'll ever see her. But I don't think there's any reason she isn't.
I think there's probably more than one Juliana.
Say that again, Justin.
I'd be more than one Juliana.
Oh my God.
Well, that's a road I'm not even walking down.
I'm going to just say this once, Justin. I think you are the new George. You will help us remember him in good spirits.
Absolutely.
In perpetuity. So thank you for that.
Well, George always took his theories very seriously.
Yes.
He did.
He did. He certainly gave us lots to think about. Okay, so moving now to Justin's theory. I just put this down as one letter. That letter is Q, which I listed as speculation and smacked it down as fan wink. Sean had it as utter speculation, and his smackdown was kinder. He said Q just doesn't fit this kind of show, the tone of this kind of show.
Yeah, as much as I love Q.
So I don't think, from my perspective, I don't think anything has changed on this one. It's still there. I think that
why wouldn't Q show up?
Why wouldn't?
That means it's Picard on his final mission. He's dying. I mean,
oh God!
why wouldn't he?
I could just.
He didn't show up
now.
when he was being tortured by Cardassians. I mean, he's just not.
dying.
He's not a Deus ex machina. That's just not what this show is going to do.
No,
except when his heart died.
I'll be completely.
You're dead.
I'll be completely and utterly honest. I would love to see the end of Picard be that Q shows up and say, "Hey, you want to come join the Continuum?"
Not in this show.
Boy, that would piss off and make so many people happy at the same time.
It would make a lot of people happy.
It
I
would.
agree.
He would.
They see it as that is a very
But he
good
looks
word.
at
Picard.
Vindication!
I did love the reference in this episode by the I think it was the ENH, the navigation one, who was going through all of Picard's great achievements, and one of them was what was it, the lead
arbitrator to the Q Continuum.
Yeah.
So he was in this
Key
one.
point of contact.
No, arbitrator was Klingon. This was contact, or he was arbiter of succession.
It's arbiter of succession, correct.
But yeah, with Q, it was, I think, just like spokesman or something more along those lines.
Chief spokesman or something, I think.
It could have been chief spokesman, yeah. But I thought that was a nice reference, and I think as close to a Q as you're going to get in this show, Justin.
That's all you're getting, nerds. That's what they were saying with that. That's all
we'll
the
throw
Q
you
you're
a bone.
getting.
That
Yep.
bone is this little reference.
Well, the whole Q thing comes from the beginning whenever you've seen the cards in forward. So, I mean, that's where a lot of Q theories.
Because there were queens. There were five queens.
I thought it had more to do with Borg than it did with Qs.
Yeah, I did too.
I think.
So are we gonna? Is that it for the speculation SmackDown? Because I want to hear Kate's.
Yeah, we've got two more, but one of them is also from Justin, and it's in the same position, which is the Traveler. I have that also listed as utter speculation and fan wank. So far, I don't think there's any indication that
Trello don't give a fuck about Picard. Trello was all about Wesley.
Why would we see Will Wheaton show up again?
Because he's in the after show.
He's
will
busy
tell you,
enough with the
his
after
role.
show.
I already have a theory on how we're going to see Will Wheaton again. Okay, when Data is brought back.
Should I
to
list
life-
this as an actual prediction?
No, absolutely not.
Okay,
When they bring back Data, it's going to be an android that looks just like Wesley Crusher.
And then for the first time ever, I will actually say the words, "Shut up, Wesley."
Exactly.
That is more of a short theory than I could ever concoct.
Well,
Okay.
Hey, I'm channeling him. That's all I can tell you. Yep.
Okay, so the last one was my theory about ancient Romulans having created the Borg and it being an experiment that went awry.
Yep.
I'm going to change the status to increasingly likely.
Yes.
Because wouldn't it be fun if they were the ones responsible for feature?
I would like to build upon this theory
Yeah, go ahead.
because there was a video game that kind of dealt with this as well.
There's also a Battlestar Galactica series that did this too.
The video game itself is not important, but in that video game, it was a Vulcan that became the first Borg queen. I don't remember what video game that was.
wow.
Star Trek Legacy.
Legacy. Yeah, I can pull up the cutscene.
I would like to expound upon your theory, Carlos, and say that it wasn't ancient Romulans. It was pre-sundering Vulcans, and that the creation.
So it was the Vulcans' fault. They're the French of the.
Well,
the
so long as it
galaxy.
wasn't humans' fault.
The creation itself.
Nice.
The creation itself caused the Vulcan Civil War in the first place.
You know, I am not
Because there were
opposed to
those that were opposed to the creation and those that were for the
Yeah.
creation.
And
And then when the creation went awry, well, there's your war.
But there's no trace of it in Vulcan.
Well, look, the Vulcans have never been very forthcoming with they're always been very private to begin with. I don't have a problem with this because if I recall correctly, the Vulcan Romulan split was 10,000 years ago. I mean, if you're going back that far, sure. I don't. That's as good of a theory as any. I don't. And this would
Yeah, I just
explain-
don't see it likely as being before the split. I see it as much more likely after.
Well, but okay, that's fair enough. But what I want to point out though, that too would also make more sense as to why we have, if we're assuming it is actually a Vulcan, why she has the mutual interest with the Romulans over this situation. So it's as good as any. Let's put it that way. I'm not opposed to it.
I'm glad you brought up Legacy because I was thinking about that too. Because what if it was Vulcans? What if it was the Vulcans that broke away that created Romulans that caused
What?
It was yeah. Well, okay, wait. Didn't the Romulans break off from the Vulcans?
Yeah, they
Yes.
split off and went their own way.
What if it was the Romulans that broke off from the Vulcans that somehow caused?
Well, that's what Carlos' theory is.
Yeah,
But okay, look, the story, the lore of this has been that the Romulans broke off from the Vulcans because they did not want to accept the teachings of Sarek and going full logic only. They believed in their passion. Now, if you look at it from this perspective, you can tangentially connect the creation of the Borg by the Vulcans, because if anything, the Borg have literally no emotion whatsoever.
Yeah, but they're also rapacious and that just
here's
doesn't
my
make any
issue.
sense.
But
That doesn't
Carlos,
make any sense.
your theory is created as an experiment and gone horribly wrong. So it would make sense.
But
from
to
that
what end?
perspective.
How does this fit with Vulcan philosophy? I don't think it does.
it-
It fits
it-
perfectly with Romulan philosophy, which is about conquest.
But
Well,
it doesn't fit with the Borg.
But-
So
What-
here's what we've
how
seen with the
so?
Borg up till now. When we were first introduced to them, they were not interested in organics at all, and they were only interested
Untrue.
in technology.
Untrue.
In our first encounter with the Borg,
Well, but you can't lean on that because.
I'm going to elaborate, please.
Okay, go ahead.
They started only interested in technology. They drilled into the Enterprise computer. They drilled into the Enterprise itself and extracted a section of the hull. They extracted whole colonies from the outpost along the neutral zone. And then later, when in First Contact, when they are in Best of Both Worlds, when they needed a speaker, they assimilated a person. The Borg, as they begin on their efforts of assimilating cultures, they say things like, we will add your biological and technological distinctness to our own.
Mm-hmm.
But the Borg are not entirely inorganic. They're a fusion of organic and synthetic.
Yeah.
So I'm having a hard time understanding the anti-synthetic side of things when the Borg
because
are
it
not
went
synthetic
wrong.
life forms.
Therefore, I mean, that's why the Borg are sort of they're the Frankenstein of the Romulans. They're an experiment that went wrong. They lost control of it, and in just the way that we're seeing artificial intelligence today, evolve on its own, and sometimes having to be restrained by its creators, that this is the kind of thing that we're seeing. And remember, one of the other important aspects of the Borg, in addition to what you pointed out, Ross, is their search for perfection.
Yeah,
And,
that's what I was getting to.
and I will admit that is much more of a Vulcan thing.
Thank you.
I will admit that.
But that perfection is a fusion perfection, a perfection of organic and technological fusion.
But that's just
it doesn't mesh with anything that we know or have seen.
Yes, but you have to remember, we're seeing this tens of thousands of years later after they've split. So you can't assume that it was this way at the beginning and that it didn't change into this.
The thing I'm having a hard time understanding is the distinction between the Borg and synthetic life. Synthetic life, by its definition, is just synthetic. Androids and Daj, who are organic synthetics. They are flesh and blood. They're not cybernetic. They are artificially created flesh and blood life forms, like the Cylons, like Fallout synths. But the Borg are neither of those things. So I'm having a hard time making that connection.
Well, that would explain why Daj would be being both. Would be the destroyer on both sides of that equation.
Well, I mean, I see what you're saying, and I think I can't give you an answer to that because I don't think we know enough to really be able to connect those dots, other than to say that they may see the ultimate, the end game of artificial life being of biologics by synthetic biologics, and that's what they're trying to prevent.
I'm still having a hard time seeing the Borg connection to that, the way you guys are pitching it.
Well, what you have to remember is that what the Borg are today aren't what they're trying to prevent. They're trying to prevent the same set of the same escalation that resulted in what were, I guess, the primitive Borg thousands of years ago from being replicated again in the galaxy, because they don't want another Borg.
Assuming the Romulans created the Borg.
Yes, that's assuming that's assuming that the Romulans created the Borg. That's the theory.
Yeah. I'm still very skeptical about this theory.
Okay, no, I mean, plenty of people are. So.
I think if they didn't create them, they ran into them at a very, very, very early stage.
Oh, I got a feeling that there's a bigger connection between these than we think.
Yeah, I think so too.
I do have to have that scene from Star Trek Legacy pulled up if anyone's interested.
No, we have to wind up. We're at 2 hours, and you can post it in the Trello or on.
I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear from Kate if she has a theory on all this, on a speculation, as it were.
Do you have a prediction, Kate?
I never make predictions about shows I enjoy. I enjoy them in the moment.
I like it.
I'm actually writing it down that way. I never make predictions about shows I enjoy.
Yeah, watch me make a prediction sometime.
Well, we're gonna keep our ears peeled for that.
You're gonna be watching Facebook.
Okay, so one last round. Any new predictions to add to the list
Yes.
this week? Ross, go for
Since
it.
I missed out last week, I have two.
Okay.
First off, I think the artifact was disabled by the Romulan scout ship, where all the people in that room are being held. My reasoning is every time we've seen liberated Borg in the past, they have difficulty separating from the collective, but they're never damaged in the same way. I think that we have another Icheb situation where they were sent as a Trojan horse by the Romulans. A crew made up of persona non grata, which in the case of a spiritual researcher would absolutely check with the old Romulan Empire. The Tal Shiar would love to get rid of those kind of thinkers. And used to bait and experiment to see if a weapon probably similar to the one that the Enterprise was going to send Hugh back with would be effective against the Borg and completely break down their internal subnet.
So they were bait, essentially.
Yes.
They were bait. Okay.
They were
right.
Typhoid Marys.
All right. Okay, I like it. I'm going to vote actually a possible on that one. Anybody else?
That's
a good theory.
That's a good theory because
That's pretty possible.
we know that Romulans outfitted Nero ship with Borg technology. So I mean, they had to get the cube from somewhere.
But was that ever established in the film?
It wasn't established in the film.
That's why I have to dismiss anything that was not actually established on screen. That's the only reason why I can't go with that part of it.
I mean, it makes sense and it fits with the facts as we know them so far. But that's, I think, as far as we can.
My only problem with this notion is I've completely lost my train of thought. Get back to me. Never mind.
Okay.
I agree.
The 09 comics. The 09 comics.
My second one.
Yeah.
Maddox
Russ.
is not alone.
Oh, hey.
He didn't create Daj and Soji alone.
Yeah.
And whoever he's working with has an agenda. And that is why these two are out there looking for something.
Yeah, it's Wesley
Daj was
Data.
going to Daystrom Institute to look for information on something, probably for Maddox's old data and anything they could find on data, lore, B4, anything. Maybe even gather the old materials. And Soji is very clearly looking for something on the artifact. Most specifically in this episode being why that cube was disconnected from the collective.
Exactly.
There's an agenda here. And it's being orchestrated by more than one person, more than just Maddox.
All right. I think that also, I would put it as a possible, but does anyone else think it's more likely?
I think it's definitely. I like the first part of it with Maddox having someone else working with him. Definitely, I definitely like that. I was going to say though, the only thing I don't like about the whole Typhoid Mary thing is that Trek has done that twice. They did it with each of, and they did it with Hugh. So it's from a practical standpoint of the storytelling. I don't think they're going to repeat that road again, but it is a possibility.
Well, the only reason I think they could, in support of Russ's theory, is that it's not a huge plot point here. In Icheb's case, the other case, those were big plot points. This is not. This is an incidental understanding. It's some context that gets to the real plot point, which I think is what you're saying, Ross.
Yeah.
I agree with Ross's idea that someone's working with Maddox. I think I might have a theory on who it could be. Who else could be an expert in cybernetics? Dr. Louis Zinnerman.
Yeah! Holy shit! Forgot about that.
EMH. That freaking EMH. I mean, we haven't heard nothing about these doctors
and
yet.
let's not forget that Bob Picardo was dropping hints about being in the show that people were speculating. Holy shit, Justin! God damn!
I've been waiting on this one.
Okay, I'm putting that down as Dr. Louis Zimmerman may be working with Maddox. And how should we list that? I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah.
I think it wouldn't be, I would be okay with it if it turned out to be true, but I'm not sure.
It's not one of the crazier ideas I've heard, so, I mean.
Okay, I'm listing it as not opposed unless anyone wants to upgrade or downgrade it.
Not opposed.
Okay. Who would like to go next? Those were both of yours, Ross. Anyone else? Son, do you have any predictions this week? Oh, Sean, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna point out that we didn't even discuss it, but it was kind of a throwaway line at the end from Rafi about her need to join this mission and she would not explain why. And
yeah, there was something she wants on Freehold.
Right, exactly. And I also think it has to do with Maddox. Free Cloud. I also think it has to do with Maddox as well. So I think there's more of a connection with her and Maddox and this whole bigger story, bigger context, because I have no doubt at all that she
would she? We have seen no indication that she is into synthetics at all.
Nothing to do with that. It has to do with the bigger conspiracy of Starfleet that she has been pursuing all these years.
Has she?
Yeah, because she touched on it.
Look, she was very clear with Picard. I got all the evidence right here. I think this is about her getting vindication on her theories and all of her evidence is what I think this has to do with. And Maddox is the key to this, which would directly connect to the synths and the synth attack on Mars.
I think Sean's on something here because she was talking to Picard at the very beginning of the episode, stating how she thought this was a cover-up. There is no way the synths could have done this without some...
She didn't say she thought it. She said she knew it and she had the evidence, is what she said. So she's very adamant about this, even 14 years later.
Maybe that's why she got fired. She pushed her luck with the CNC.
Yep.
That does make more sense to me, because just because Picard got fired doesn't mean she would necessarily get fired. She would be reassigned unless she did something.
That her whole career is gone.
And since Picard left, he was not there to back her up and save her from getting fired for her.
I get the feeling that it wouldn't have mattered, because I think whatever happened in that meeting after Picard, that it wasn't just a matter of you're fired. It was a matter of she told them what's what, and that's what got her gone.
So basically, she's a dwarf. She dug too greedily and too deep.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm listing that as not opposed. All right, who's next, Son?
I want to backtrack to Ross's. I kind of agree with Ross that this was a Typhoid Mary situation, but I think it was a long time ago, because what we see of the Borg is that, guess what they don't have? Cloaking technology.
Nope.
And them assimilating a Romulan ship should have given them cloaking technology, unless that technology was specifically cut off from the collective.
Or the ship they were on didn't have a cloaking device.
That's the other side of it, right? Exactly, too, because not all. I would not presume that all Romulan ships have cloaking devices.
I would also question if you're an omnipotent or powerful a species as the Borg believe themselves to be. Why would you need a cloak? Their whole point is making themselves known, not hiding.
Exactly. That's right. But to that end, I will say this: is that something happened really bad when they tried to assimilate that ship.
Yeah, that's clear. That part is clear. So, okay. So I listed you along with Ross on the Typhoid Mary theory. Son, do you have anything else?
It's more of fan wank, wishful thinking. That Admiral O's final words are her name.
No, son.
Isn't that what happened with Kirk? No, he was. Oh no, that was
oh my! No, it wasn't.
Oh my! Yeah, he pulled the George Takei in his final words. Oh my! That's right.
That's actually kind of hilarious.
I would absolutely love it if it turns out the Vulcan gets backstabbed by Romulans by being disrupted, and her last words are literally, "Oh."
Oh my God.
Okay,
like
I'm listing the status for that as we'd love it.
List the status of that as grown.
Grown. Okay. Anything else, Son?
No, that's it. I just expounding upon your theory.
Okay. Justin, what do you have?
Okay,
Zimmerman?
Well, depending on Ross's theory, just a little bit. What if these Romulans have got to assimilate with Tal Shiar?
Why would that matter?
Now, what if the Tal Shiar agents had a virus implanted that caused the board to malfunction? Because we already know Section
My thought
31
that they.
agent.
My
We
thought
already
was
know.
if they. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, my thought would be because Section 31, we already know their agents had a failsafe built into them and to prevent mind tampering. What, not Tal Shiar?
My thought was that they were all disposable people or people who had run afoul of the Tal Shiar.
Yeah. They were it was a convenient way to get rid of dissenters,
To disappear people.
troublemakers.
Because they're not
Basically,
coming
all the
back from
prisoners-
assimilation.
Basically, all the prisoners from V for Vendetta.
There you go.
Yeah. They were the boat people. Okay, anything else? I don't have anything to add. I think my theory from last week is expansive enough to cover me for another week, so I'm going to leave it there. Any last words before we wind up for the episode? We do have next week is episode 4, Absolute Candor, which we meet. We got more flashbacks back to when Picard was reaching out to Romulan colonies, it looks like, and he meets a young Elnor, and we meets him again as a much older Romulan who is pledging his sword to apparently to Picard's cause. So
Romulan Elrond.
yeah. So
The Three Musketeers.
it looks
Elfin
beautifully shot.
Romulan.
It looks beautifully shot. Is there anything else in the trailer that you guys saw that that struck your fancy?
To list Warbird.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the old Warbird.
Picard dressed as John Hammond.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You had the okay, so you have this kind of elegance in Elnor, but yet at the same time, some of the visuals that we're seeing are of what basically looks like a Romulan version of a Western.
Yep. I was thinking Mandalorian, to be honest.
Well, I don't know. They have sword fights, so
The samurais.
Well, samurais.
I think it's more that. But we'll see. I guess.
Samurai westerns.
I mean,
I did notice the little sign that said Romulans only.
I did like that. Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, that's.
So yeah, I'm interested in seeing. Yeah,
That's a pretty good
thanks for. And he said Jolan True, which I always love when they throw in a Jolan True.
Well, not just Romulans only, but Romulans only in English. If we should point that out.
Yeah, in English it was greetings, but I think the literal meaning is.
No, not that. The sign, your sign you're talking about. It was in English. It said Romulans only.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was way past that. I was getting to the scene that
It was only 5
Justin
seconds
has
ago,
put up there.
Carlos.
I know, but we'd already moved on.
God.
Yes, there it is. There's the sign.
Yep.
And I don't know. Are we finally going to see 7 of 9 in this one? I think we may be. That may be episode 5, based on what
From what I can tell from what we've seen of 7 of 9 is that we see her back at Chateau Picard. I
I don't think so.
It looked like his study.
That's a question I have about this episode. That alone is a question I have about this episode. When Picard and Dr. Jurati piece the hell out of the chateau, sources, quote unquote, are saying more reinforcements are coming. More hell is about to break loose upon the chateau itself. And here Picard is leaving behind 2 former Tal Shiar agents with an absolute war cache of weapons.
Yeah.
They'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
I'm not worried about that. They got it covered.
Possibly,
but that's a really huge lingering question.
Well, and it also shows a scene between Rafi and Picard in his at the winery.
Hologram.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe we're overthinking it. Maybe these are just flashbacks because it just seems.
It could be a flashback, but it didn't seem like I don't know. Like when they parted ways, they parted ways. Unless this is the scene in which they parted ways.
There are too many windows in that room for it to be his study.
I mean, but look at it. I mean, where else is that? Where could that possibly be?
Holodeck.
All right. Okay.
I'm pretty.
Why?
Okay, but
There are enough
we
holographic
know.
emitters
Hey.
on that ship to simulate any kind of study that Picard wants.
But Justin, pull up that. There's a scene in one of the trailers. It's in a couple of them actually. It was 7 and 9. She's got the dual wield Romulan disruptor rifles. Where I'm trying to figure out where that was located. Where, if we have any indication of where that was located. You know what I'm talking about?
It looked like it was on the artifact, but
Oh, it did.
Yeah,
okay, I
yeah.
thought it was in something terrestrial, in something like.
Well, consider what we've seen of the artifact from. Hang on, let me see if I can find it because I think it was in last episode.
Oh, speaking of, no, you guys didn't mention it, but a couple sources pointed it out. When Rhonda freaked out, Soji's badge blinked green.
did it?
Yeah,
Yes.
briefly.
Oh my God! I'm gonna have to go back and watch that. I did
Hang on.
not see that. Did you go back and watch it again, Ross?
Oh, yeah, I watched it a couple times, but also a few of the Easter egg and analysis videos I've watched pointed it out.
Huh. Interesting.
Hey.
Oh, that's crazy.
We're all watching intently now.
I know, really.
I'd share audio, but
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I just want to see the green blinky thing.
yeah.
There's a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
You guys are so obsessed with seeing the green light.
We
Well, Picard was obsessed with 4 lights, so we can get our 1 green.
we want 1 green. That's
Yep.
true.
Well,
What are huge flashes too?
Can you skip a bit?
Yeah, seriously.
I'm afraid if I skip, we'll miss it.
Well, it's coming up. This is the build up to it.
I want to add dialogue here so badly.
There it is.
Well, hot damn. Are you using
There it
this?
is.
Hang on.
Cupcake! Yay!
It was short but very brightly green.
Cupcake.
Yeah, good catch. I'm glad you brought
It
that up.
should pop up again when she
It's
stands up.
Oh, it was more than once?
Yeah.
I now will permanently think of this guy as Cupcake. Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome. Oh, and something else I wanted to point out, and I brought this up
Okay,
way back in, I think, the first.
Oh, there it was. That was a panic attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I want to point this out in the first. I discussed in the beginning. I loved what she said about. We briefly brought it up, but just expanding on it. I love what she said about because he's a northerner and he's stubborn. I love that line about that because it kind of did what Star Trek really. It should have kind of clarified a long time ago that. Not everybody on the planet looks or sounds or acts alike, that people have regional differences to them, just like they do on Earth, in their appearance, in their inflections.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the different
attitudes.
appearances of humans on one
Right.
planet.
Exactly.
And we're all the same species.
Exactly, right.
You've got pygmies in Africa, you've got Australian Aborigines.
Yeah.
You have Inuits in the north, and they all
you have
look very different from each other.
you have the worst in Seattle, so yeah, there he
You got
is.
the Gingers of Ireland.
Right. So,
and I'd like to take this opportunity, by the way, to thank Sean for the very lovely Christmas, the very lovely birthday present he got me last week, a disco prize.
yes,
From Eagle Moss. It's gorgeous. I have it here on my desk and will for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Good. You're most welcome. Very, very glad to do it. And Dayton Morton's. If Dayton Morton is watching the show tonight, he may get one too because he does so nicely.
Can we touch on the La Serena before we sign off?
Okay, that'll be our last bit. Go for it.
Hang on, let me.
So I've seen a bit of crap being slung at the ship because it looks so different from anything that we've seen before. That's on purpose, guys.
Yeah.
This crew is non-Starfleet, ex-Starfleet. This show is very much not Starfleet. This ship is going to be as far from Starfleet as they get, purposefully. This is an unregistered rogue ship out there doing whatever the hell it wants, whenever the hell it wants. And I think it looks...
And when it goes to warp, it does it just like the old Enterprise D did.
Yes, it does. And
whose heart did not go pitter-pat with the music at the end there?
I cried.
We talked briefly about the lateral vector transporter.
Yeah.
Yep.
We've got, apparently it's crewed almost entirely by holograms that look just like the captain.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, it's a unique design choice to have that whole upper deck be completely empty
open.
space.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
I wonder what it's going to be filled with.
Shortly, the Motley Crew, as they call themselves.
Well, clearly it's going to be filled with Wesley Crusher datas. So I wanted to point out that something about this too, about the fact that it's crewed by holograms. I think this goes to exactly what Rio said about his own trauma on the ship he was on and seeing his captain get killed the way he got killed.
Mm-hmm.
I think this has a lot to do. The reason why he only has holograms is because he does not want to go through that ever again.
Yeah.
Ibn Omar, I believe it was named for.
It was Ibn Mazur, I think.
Ibn Mazur. Yeah.
Actually, Adam Owen actually posted a link to.
Yes, that's the one I'm paraphrasing.
Right, and it is the Ibn Majid is what
that's
it is.
Majid, right?
Yeah, and he was a 15th century navigator credited with navigating for Vasco da Gama. So it's a pretty interesting, pretty interesting connection. But I love how Star Trek does that. They of course the best ships are named after explorers. So
yeah.
Wonder what terrible thing happened that Starfleet scrubbed the ship entirely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
just like Discovery.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Something within me seems to think that it might be another Pegasus situation.
Oh,
could be.
Maybe
it's a Romulan connection there. I want to know exactly what it smells like to have Starfleet on you, because that's
it's very antiseptic.
It smells a lot like your accountant's office. That's all I'm saying. Like Glade scented
I love the way he
candles.
fought back at it and says, "Don't get inside my head."
It smells like biscuits.
So who do you think built this ship and how long has it been around?
I think it's probably been around a while because it's had lateral vector transporters on it.
Yeah.
But it's got hollow emitters everywhere.
Well, that's just retrofitted.
Yeah, you retrofit.
If you're going to retrofit a ship, why not retrofit it with modern transporters?
I've realized something. Carlos really likes saying lateral vector transporters.
I really do. I really do.
Maybe they're not contractable or traceable as the transporters are.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that we're seeing these types of transporters again. Look at how Picard visited Starfleet. Like, there's no real huge transporter pad there, was there?
No, it
was.
Well, that's true, but that's not
a gateway.
Yeah,
I think that's a whole different evolution of
what I'm getting at
lateral
is
vectors it's historical.
Right. But what I'm getting at is what we've seen in the past couple of series with the straight up and down transporters. What if they went back to that design and because of the technology they've come through with, created that again?
I got the feeling that they were trying to give it a more of an older aesthetic for that.
For the ship, yeah.
And
I think transport portals you saw they were just a way to visually indicate that this is it's set in even more of a future than we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hey, speaking of more in the future than we've seen in the past, there was a bunch of Easter eggs that have been out there about, modern props being used, modern, devices and things being used as props in the new series. The one I picked up, I don't know if anybody caught this, but in the opening scene on Utopia Planitia, with the replicators, anybody realize what those were?
3D printers.
Yeah, they're 3D printers. Yeah,
absolutely. I was like, those are 3D printers all day long.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
And they dinged like a microwave.
Yes, they did.
The old ways are still the good ways, I guess.
I really like the holographic interface on the Lost Arena.
Oh yeah, me too.
The way he just.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yep. Well, here's the thing. Let's not forget, that has been referenced to before. That was referenced in The Visitor on Deep Space Nine. They specifically talked about that, and that they couldn't get used to the Defiant's old, physical controls because they're used to using holographic displays.
And certain individuals have been pissing up a storm about it because they don't like it because it's not tactile.
Oh, boo-hoo-hoo. By the way,
how do they know it's not tactile?
Yeah, exactly.
How do they know that?
Yeah,
They can create solid holograms.
Yes,
They want
exactly.
buttons. They want toggle switches.
Oh,
they want the little
cry
gumdrops
river.
back.
They cry
Okay,
river.
Tom Paris, calm the hell down.
Hey, but anyone notice or not that Uma during the Mars segment there with the whole replicators? I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, I think it was like the Una or Matrix or whatever it was, the replicators.
No,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, the formula that the replicators were using. That was they used the same technobabble in. Questions.
Like the
Q&A.
Yeah.
Sorry, Q&A.
in what?
The short track Q&A.
Yeah,
That was one of the
okay,
questions
okay.
Spock
Yeah.
asked.
Got it.
number one.
Okay. Oh, didn't know. Say, good. Hey, nice pickup.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll go back and take a look at that. That's a good catch. All right, we are way over time. Thank you all for staying over time. And for those of you listening, thank you. I hope we kept your attention for those extra 20 minutes or so. And join us again next week. And of course, for our regular Super Geeks podcast, which comes out this weekend. And we'll see you again next week for episode 4. Absolute Candor.
Yay! All righty.
And thank you, Kate, for joining us.
Oh, thanks.
Glad to have you here.
Absolutely.
We hope we didn't scare you off too bad.
If she can survive Axamonitor, this should be fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes,
Oh, yes.
what a piece of cake.
And remember, I'm always archiving.
Just like Colin's Kindle.
One flash at a time. Oh, yes, he did. Or Robert Myers Burnett's France. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.